All right, welcome to our second episode of Winning at Life. My name is Luis, and I'm going to be your co-host today, joined with
Severin, your other co-host.
And today we're going to talk on a topic that we both have so much experience with, and we have had to learn like so many difficulties and just gone like through roller coasters on trying to figure out passion and purpose on this lifetime. So without further ado, let's get started. So one of the first things that I think we want to talk on is like, where exactly does passion come from? So Sev, I think you know my story a little bit pretty well. When I discovered my passion, I ended up like actually having to read a lot of books to discover it, because for a long time out of high school, I realized that I was working jobs that I didn't actually love, right? I didn't actually desire to be there. So I read this one book and it completely changed my life. I think I was telling you a little bit about it, but it's this book called Mastery by Robert Greene. And basically in the book, Mastery, Robert Greene talks about how there's this thing called a life task, right? And the life task is one of the most important things that you can ever figure out, because it is basically like what you should be doing and what you were born to do in this lifetime. And anything that is not that will deviate you from your purpose and will ultimately lead to some depression and anxiety of not being on the right path. But the real question is like, how do you actually know where this passion is coming from? How do you actually like recognize that it's the right one? How do you actually go about that? So I remember, like I was telling you, what you actually have to do is you have to go back to your childhood. You have to go back to when you were really young. And the reason why you have to go back to when you're really young is because that is when you were the purest mentally. That's when no one has conflated what you want to do in life with what you are expected to do in life. So it's the most beautiful and it's the best time for you to truly just be yourself, right? To genuinely be yourself without the expectations of other people. So when people say is like, okay, basically you just need to go back to your childhood. And for me, I had a very difficult time with that because I obviously understood my childhood. I remembered it very well, but I couldn't string along patterns nearly as well as like an outside observer. So for this, I was like, let me ask my mom, who obviously grew up with me, and she gave me a really good answer. And the answer that I got from her was, when you were really young, you would teach people a lot, right? Like you'd be someone that was like teaching them what to do because you understood the concept and maybe they didn't. So you were the first person that everyone would go to just understand what they couldn't understand, right? And it was so interesting when she brought that up to me, because it made me realize that I had been doing that the entire time that I was in the education system. And it wasn't until money was introduced as a factor that completely changed. And I think it's quite interesting because money is one of those things that kind of corrodes people and their souls, because most people tend to do anything for money. And that includes living a miserable life that they don't want to actually live, right? And it's quite depressing, because your passion is what kind of ignites you. It's kind of like what gives you life and joy and like happiness, right? Because it's so innate to your true personality, to who you really are. And if you deviate from that, you deviate from yourself. And when you deviate from yourself, like there's nothing good that comes from that. So for me, like that teaching passion was something that I had done very, very naturally in elementary, middle, and high school. And matter of fact, like the TED talk that I gave was an exact the exact manifestation of that teaching passion, because I would have done it for free. And that's kind of what this podcast is also about as well, is like, I want to be able to teach what I know because I love it. It's the thing that ignites me. It's the thing that like I have so much passion for, and I can do it forever, So really, you have to go back to childhood. You have to go back to when you were pure, before anyone influenced you in any certain direction. And I think as lucrative as it is to be in hot industries right now, the majority of people maybe aren't the best suited for it, or they would be suited for other things that are less lucrative. And I think in this lifetime, making money is a very important thing. But I think making money and being content while you're making it is probably far, far greater than making money quicker.
Well, yeah, I would say it's not necessarily money that corrodes, but it's trading your passion for money is what actually corrodes you. So you traded, like, your passion is your soul. You sold your soul for money, essentially, because your passion is your soul. It's what keeps you alive. It's what keeps you going. Like you said, it's what keeps you ignited. So you trade that for money, and you sold the fire away. You sold everything that, you know, keeps you pushing. Maybe there's some other things that keep you going, like your family and friends and all of that. But the one thing that you had that was like true to you, that you would chase, that you would, you know, sacrifice so much for, is what you gave up. It's like kind of a twisted, you know, exchange. So that's what truly like corrodes you. Because then over time, even if you don't consciously realize you did it, subconsciously, you know that you're far from where you should be, or that you're not following the path that is innate to you. So that's like what actually corrodes you. Because money isn't necessarily an emotional thing. It's far separate from emotion or anything like that. That's something I've learned definitely over years in the stock market. But it's just that when emotions get involved, that's when things start to get dangerous, and that's when money starts to become a real like tool for, you could call it evil, but definitely like immorality or danger, basically. So yeah, I mean, that's my take on it. But I would say, like, just for a short backstory on sort of where I've come from. My backstory is similar to Luis's here for my passion, but growing up, I definitely read a lot. So I was reading books all the time. I read fiction, but I enjoyed nonfiction more than probably most people my age. Mostly about, you know, the STEM studies, so like, you know, science and technology and engineering and mathematics too. So I gained a natural love for like solving problems at a very young age. So I enjoyed all of my classes, basically, where I'm like doing math and I'm doing science, and I'm like, these problems, even word problems that like in your workbook in school, like stuff that other kids would kind of like, you know, oh, I want to just get this done so I can go outside and play ball. I was definitely much more of, you know, the classically nerdy type. I liked doing those problems. I liked, you know, solving the math problems and whatnot, and doing all of that problem solving. And only later on did I really realize, like, it sort of got obscured by the engineering stuff that allured me of like building things. I have always enjoyed building things as well, but I realized like the true main thing is just solving problems. That's what lies underneath everything. And then building is just a manifestation of like how you execute the solution for the underlying problem solving domain that I love to do. And that's a very general, you know, thing. Oh, I like to solve problems. But, you know, when I think about it, at the end of the day, like, I see a problem and I think of solutions just right off the top of my head, whether it's even feasible or not, whether I even have any kind of right to have an opinion on the topic. I'm like, you know, this is an issue and I want to fix it. I want to solve it. This is what I think about. Is this right? Is this wrong? And I'll just like think about these things. I'll like research them, even if it's sort of unrelated to what I'm doing. So even I'll get distracted from what I should be doing to like think about, oh, this thing just came up. How would I like fix this? Or how would I, you know, do blah, blah, blah. So that's like the thing that really keeps me going. That's my like passion. And so definitely that pairs nicely with, you know, monetary gain, because if you solve problems generally for people, you will be rewarded. But that's not every source of passion is as like clean. Like teaching people, if you go the classical way and you're teaching people, you get to be a professor or a teacher teaching a bunch of like screaming kids, and you probably don't get paid very well. So, but that's not the only route you have to take, right? That's just the one that's like the classic, like you go through the education system, that's what you are set to do. But there's so many other alternative ways to exercise that passion than just that one specific route. And, you know, that route may or may not be right for you. Maybe it is right for you. I would just say if I was teaching people, that probably wouldn't be right for me, but there is an allure to that, right? You're raising like the next generation of children. It's definitely very, very appealing. I can see why it is. I've always like thought about that as like, wow, I really respect the people who do that. So yeah, I mean, because they raised both of us. Basically, when you're away from your parents, your teachers are the most profound sort of impact that you can have on a child's life comes from the teachers. So yeah, but that's a little sidetracked. So yeah, the main thing is like passion. I saw it as like problem solving. That's what I've always done, and just the ways that that manifests can be different depending on what exactly you're doing. And yeah, that definitely ties in nicely to how to actually keep the passion, keep the flame going. How do you not lose it? Because like I said, there are a lot of different ways that you can exercise your passion, and some ways for you will be more, they might be easier, they might be harder, they might be a better fit, they might be not as much of a fit, right? And easier isn't always better, but sometimes it is. It may be that the easiest path is the right one for you. I would say for me, like, one thing I'm really big into, and this is definitely like stereotypical Bay Area nerd stuff, but it's like quantitative finance. I love doing it. I've loved the stock market ever since I learned about it. And so that's like one of my truest passions, is like that stuff. And it's like, it's such a stupid thing to be interested in, to think you can beat like the most efficient systems on the planet. But that's exactly how I know it's like one of my true passions, is I still keep at it even though I know that, right? Like, you keep cracking, you keep trying new strategies, you keep doing back tests, and you keep doing like simulations and doing risk analysis and all of that, and you never let up. And that's how you know it's like a real solid, tangible passion, because you can't stop. You literally cannot put it down. Like, that's the thing. It's like addictive. Maybe it's because it's gambling, but that's besides the point. That's besides the point. So yeah, but that's like one of the ways to know if it's really something you're super passionate in, is if you just can't put it down for the life of you. You have to keep doing it, and it's not always going to be easy. It's definitely not. I mean, for me particularly, like, it's a very frustrating domain to always be devising new strategies and new theories that you think personally are like genius, and then the market crushes them, because that's just how it works. And that's like, if you keep pushing through that, that's how you know you found something. Because I can't tell you how many strategies over the years, how many times something looks really good, and then I realized at the end of the day, I have to put it down. Like, literally, I have to kill my baby that I've worked so hard on for whatever, how many tens, hundreds of hours, and I have to just pull the trigger on it, because it just doesn't work. But you get back up the next day and you do the next thing. That's like real passion. That's what I personally felt of, like, you know, oh, there's so many like highs, but then following it every single time seems to be a low. But then every now and then you find the diamond in the rough, and you just keep channeling that sort of energy, and you keep pushing. And that's how you know this is a real passion, when you can keep at it, even through those rough times and those, you know, emotional, like, despairing periods, and, you know, all of the highs, of course. But that's my take on passion. Maybe not so much on how to keep it, but that's definitely how I identify it, like, very viscerally with myself. I don't know if you have anything to...
You actually brought up a lot of good points. That was actually very nicely condensed. So
Thank you.
Yeah, that was good. I'm trying to see how to add to that, because you touched on most of the ones that I think are very important. I think one of the most important ones that you said that is it's a clear indicator of someone that is doing the thing that they were born to do, is when you have to drag them away from their work, right? The goal with passion, the entire goal with all of this, is that you want to be the person that does this work and it feels like fun to you, but it looks like work to everyone else. And that's a very famous Naval quote, but I think it's so true. I think the thing that you have to be doing has to be so much fun. It has to be the thing that you do, like, you know, just because it's for the love of the game, right? I think that the best things, the best art, the best work, the best music, the best everything is done for its own sake, right? Yes. Not anything more than that. And I think that you create the best work when it's done for its own sake. And I think that you are in the best hobbies and passions when it's done for its own sake. So I think it's very important for your thing that you choose to be the thing that you can't stop doing. It's too addicting. It's too, you know, fun, entertaining. It feels like gambling, you know. But that's how you know you've stumbled upon the right thing, because it's the thing that you have fun with. It's the thing that you would have done for, like, just for recreational entertainment. that's kind of how you know you're on the right path. And like, I think for me, one of the things that I remember just so vividly about it is the fact that I had had like strings of patterns of always doing it. And I didn't even know why I did it, but it was just the thing that came so naturally, right? And I think one of the things when it comes to like understanding how to not lose your passion and how to like actually keep it, how to know if it's really right for you, is if other people around you see you doing better than the average, right? So, I mean, at least for me, maybe you can touch on this as well. When I help people, when I mentor people, when I coach people, I always get a very similar compliment, which is like, I've never heard anyone say it in this way. I've never heard anyone, think in this manner. So like, people already get the conception that my advice is not of the norm. But it's only because, and they compliment it in a positive way, right? So you want to be in a position where everyone notices that you will excel in this naturally, right? And I think that's a very clear indicator that you're doing the right thing, which is like you're going above average, above and beyond, because this is the thing that just ignites you. This is the thing that you have so much fun doing, and you just decide to get better and better at it, right? And when you get better at it, then everyone starts noticing. And I think a very easy way of finding what exactly you were born to do is what does everyone like go to you for, right? That's a very clear way of finding it. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say being really good at something is definitely a good metric for it. Because if you're, naturally talented at something, that's a good advantage to like hone in on if that feels what's right for you to do. And maybe in some extreme cases it won't, but most people who are naturally like gifted at something, they found that they have that talent for a reason, and then they keep honing it for the rest of their lives. Or even if it wasn't a natural talent and it was just something that you've honed over years of doing it subconsciously or just for the sake of it, like Luis said, just doing it for the sake of, just because that's when you really hone in on it, and that's how you know for sure that you're doing something, if you're like differentiated from other people. But at the same time, I would say you won't always necessarily, you may not always visibly be better or feel better than other people at whatever it is that you're doing. I mean, I just feel this specifically for myself, and some of it is just that there's so many talented people around me in the domains that I enjoy doing, because we're in the Bay Area. This is like the heart of software engineering and all of that. So those, even though that is kind of that's the domain where I apply my like problem solving passion to, it's not something I necessarily am super differentiated from everybody else in, because there's just so many people who are really good at it. But if you have your own specific like niches or your own specific domain or field where it's more, where you are outpacing other people or you are more knowledgeable than other people at, like for me, I would say, quantitative finance, I may not be the best at it, and it's definitely not something I'm yet like profitable at. That's where I have much more experience, and finance as a whole even is where I have more experience than a lot of other people at. So that's like, that kind of domain is what differentiates me, and that's how I know it's like a good application of my problem solving passion. And of course, like if you're actually making money in the domain, and well, for me specifically, if I were to be profitable, hopefully I am soon, but yeah, if I were to be profitable, that's how I'd know like, oh yeah, this is definitely like my passion. I've chased it for long enough that it's actually paying dividends literally. But that's not always applicable to everything. And there are other domains where something is very, very technical, and there are other people who are very good at it, and you may still be passionate for it, but it's not necessarily something where there's a huge difference between you and the next person. But there's just so few people doing it, or there's just something that you do differently in some specific way that you can tell, this is what I'm born to do. And even then, I feel like, you may not always be, you may be similar to other people in whatever you're doing. But because you're not always going to be the best at whatever you're doing. It's just you're comparing yourself to some given, sample of the population, right? Like, you're never going to be number one in the world at like anything, right? That's kind of how the world works. So it does depend, I'd say. I don't know what your take on this, but it kind of is dependent on how you measure it exactly. Like, what's the group you're measuring against? Are you just measuring against your peers? And ideally, your peers are also people who you look up to, who outpace you in some way as well. So, maybe you are friends with all the people who are also passionate about what you're doing, and maybe they're like better than you in some ways at what you're doing. Or maybe someone is just flat out like way better than you at what you're passionate about. That's not a reason to get discouraged. That's a reason to work harder and work to catch up to them or even beat them in, friendly competition, or if they're your enemy in like flat out real competition, right? Because you should look up to the people who are really good at what you're doing, who you're like aligned against, or who may, be on, who may be like opposite of the spectrum that you're on, of like, I want to be better than that person. And that's like, a healthy way to compete to an extent. But yeah, I mean, I would say definitely it depends how you exactly measure. How do you know you're measuring against the right group of people, of like, yeah, I'm outpacing others, or I'm on par with others, but this is like the top of the class kind of group. Like, how do you sort of know you're using the right anchor, right? Or is it ever enough to like settle? Should you always be chasing like, I should be better? And I think you should, but there is a point where it's like there are diminishing returns probably on how much better you can be when you're in a group of other people who are really great at what they're doing. So how do you know sort of if you're in one of those situations or not? And this is like definitely something. What are your thoughts on that? Just general idea. I kind of laid out a lot of questions there. So.
Let me ask you what exactly you meant, just so that I'm like very sure about. Was the question kind of around the lines of, I have this thing that I think I'm very passionate about, and there's other people around me that are also very good at the same thing. How do I know if I am around the right people when I don't feel like I'm necessarily the best or anything, but how do I know it's the right group to surround myself with?
Well, also, how do you know? What if it's? Let me think for a moment here. Because you specifically said that one good sign of knowing that you're passionate about something is if you're complimented on it, or if you're noticeably like differentiated from others in that specific domain. Yeah. But what if you happen to be in a group of others who are also really good at the same thing, or who also sort of like match you in that area? Like, then how do you? Because what if it's just like, how do you know that it's not like, oh, everyone else is really good at it, so maybe it's not my thing, right? Or is that kind of just a little pessimistic because they're like, maybe they're outside people who compliment it on you, who compliment you on it, who are like family or friends who aren't in that same group. That's sort of what I'm asking along the lines of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I think an interesting case scenario is, I'll just use me. Think of 2 or 3 top speakers that come together. They're all really good speakers. They all articulate a little bit differently. They all have a little bit of a different message to share. They might be sharing the same message in a different way, right? And I think it kind of works like that a lot in life, which is kind of like with this life task thing, with figuring out what exactly you were born to do. It's not necessarily that you'll be better than everyone around you, but it's the thing that you'll never stop doing, right?
Yeah.
Which basically just means is like, if I'm in a group of other very, very talented speakers, or if you're in a group with other people that are in the same passion, the same hobby as you, the indicator that you are meant to do that is that you can keep up, right? Is that you can conversate and you can speak the same language as everyone else, right? And that's kind of how you know that you're on the right trajectory. If you feel ignited to do the thing and the people around you challenge you, and maybe you guys are, head to head, but it's the thing that you wouldn't stop doing, right? And it's almost like you don't, at that point you don't even need the validation from other people, because you're just like, I'm having so much fun, this is such a great thing, I'm fully in, I'm fully like committed. And I think that that's definitely how you find it. And sometimes, what you were kind of saying is that if you're already in a very competitive environment, it might be hard for you to ever hear compliments about whatever you think that you're passionate about. And I think you're definitely right. Like, if you grew up in an area where there was a lot of people that went into healthcare and you thought that your life task was revolving around healthcare, I mean, it's kind of the expectation, maybe not expectation, but it's kind of like, it's the equilibrium of the environment. So yeah, I think there are circumstances where maybe the compliments thing will not always apply. But if you do get it, it's a very clear indicator. And I think that one of the ways to gauge it as well is, who are the compliments coming from? Is it coming from like people that are already doing what you want to do, or people that aren't doing what you want to do and have no idea about it, right? Because there are certain times where you'll just be speaking about what you're passionate about to friends and family, and they'll see it in your eyes and they'll tell you, it's like, you should do that, like you'd be very good at that, right? And I think that's a very clear indicator of your strengths and weaknesses. One of the things that I've always thought was very accurate was that you always double down on your strengths, right? The weaknesses you kind of outsource, right? So if people recognize that you have strengths, then you always play to them. And if the people around you have those very similar strengths, then as long as you can keep up, you kind of know you're in the right group. You kind of know you're in the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, did I cut you off?
No, go ahead.
One thing I would also add on is like what you said about friends and family. That's an indicator that needs to be taken carefully in some regard.
Yeah.
Because if they have no idea what you're doing, and it's a little difficult, because if they have no idea what you're doing, they can still be a really good indicator of like your mom telling you need to do this. Your mom knows you better than anyone else, right? Your mom gave birth to you. But at the same time, if it's friends or family who don't know anything at all about the domain that you're doing, they can recognize the passion in you, but maybe they don't know enough about what you're doing exactly to give really good guidance on it. So in that case, it's sort of like a mixed signal. So it needs to be taken to some extent with like, you need to like contextualize, who the feedback's coming from or what they're saying exactly. But yeah, it's definitely still a good signal. And I would also say the point you made about, or the point we've been talking about like being in a group of other like-minded people, especially, if it's an environment where something is expected of you, and you may also, do something that's not expected of you as well. But if it's an environment where something's expected of you, or where you're competing with others, that's a great way to keep at it and to stick with whatever you're doing. Because one thing that does happen a lot is people lose their passions, and that's where the money idea comes from, or you like trade your passion for money. And it's not something you're doing, something that you're not really that passionate about, but it's because you have to like get by, or you just find it to be too difficult, or maybe the competition just gets to you, it eats at your nerves, and you can't do it, right? Like, those are deeper issues as well sometimes, but competition in many ways can be a great way to keep passionate and to sort of stick with the program and have some kind of, some kind of cost for leaving or cost for dropping what you're doing. Because if something is expected of you, there's naturally like friction in going a different path or going away and not doing it. And maybe that's a bad thing if you want to do something else, but oftentimes if you are passionate, you are aligned with, the group of friends that you're with who are all doing the same thing, that's a great thing. Because then it means that's something you can't drop very easily, because then you're dropping, your friend group who is all aligned around you or whatever, or your classmates or whoever you're around. And that's a great way to sort of stick with what you're doing, even when times get rough. And your friends, give you moral support because they're also there in the same sort of grind. They'll probably understand the same struggle. So that's a great way to stick with your passion, even when things are tricky, is having a group of people who are also following the same goal or pursuing the same goal or pursuing the same dream or doing the same thing you're passionate about. So that's like the probably number one way to not lose passion. Yeah, I'd say that's definitely number one way. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but it's a double-edged sword as well. Hopefully I made that clear, but yeah, it's a double-edged sword if you want to do something different. Or like the worst of all is if you think something's your passion because everyone else around you is doing it. That's going to obscure, because there's a natural friction to doing something else. So that's going to obscure your field of view to something else that might be better aligned with you, or that might be what you actually should be doing, right? So it's definitely a double-edged sword having friends who are aligned around the same thing, which is why it's like there's a difference between sort of being brought up in, like, say, like you said, an environment where you're expected to do healthcare. Maybe healthcare isn't the thing you truly want to do, but you just were naturally funneled there, versus you choosing the group of people that you're around, knowing already what your passion is and knowing that they're also all passionate about it. Because then you are choosing to align yourself with that group because you already know that's what you want to do. So yeah, there's definitely a difference there. So yeah, I don't know if you have what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so in terms of not losing passion, I want to be very clear when I say this, but this entire conversation is predicated on the idea that you already found your passion. And most people go through life and will die without knowing or without even thinking about what they were born to do on this earth. So if you've made it this far to where you know your passion, right, this next point is going to be one of arguably the most important, right? Because it may have taken you 6 months or even a couple of years to discover what you're really, really born to do.
Or a decade or lifetime almost.
Literally, like, even more, you know?
Yeah.
Some people will never figure it out. But this is assuming that you have figured out. And I kind of want to be careful here when I say passion, right? And I think this has actually been a little bit of a mistake from our end. We shouldn't have used the word passion because passions fade, passions diminish. What we're talking about is a life task, right? The thing that you were born to do. So moving forward, maybe we won't say the word passion, right? We'll say life task, right?
Good clarification.
Because your life task is something that never goes away. It's always burning within you. It is the thing that you feel called to do when nothing around you feels like it's worth doing, right? It's the voice within you that just like eats at you. It's like, hey, I shouldn't be at this job. I hate this job. Or like, I really don't like my boss. I don't like what I'm doing, with my life. I don't like where I'm at in life. It's a very clear call that you're not where you need to be and that you're not pursuing your life task, right? So once you found your life task, once you took the 6 months to a couple years of self-discovery to understand what exactly you were born to do, the hardest part is to not lose it. And the reason why I say it's hard in particular is because you have an idea, or you will have an idea of what you want out of life. And you will have to wake up every single day and reject everyone else's perceptions of what they want for your life, for you, right? Because if you don't decide on what you want, life will decide for you. And if life doesn't decide, then the people around you will decide for you. And that's unfortunately what happens in a lot of cultures. The healthcare industry is an incredible example of this, which is a lot of people are forced to go into the healthcare industry by their culture, by their family, by their relatives, because it's seen as the optimal answer for whatever their metrics are. But there's a lot of people that go into healthcare in particular that don't have any desire to go into it. It's not something that they were born to do. And as a result, they become depressed and they become, like anxious and suicidal at sometimes, just because they're not doing the thing that they were born to do. So if you have the entire world around you saying, hey, this is great, you found something that you like, but it's not gonna make you money. Or, you're competing against everyone doing it, right? You will hear people try and work actively against you. And the thing is that their intentions are pure. Most of them, their intentions are pure. They are trying to save you. They are trying to help you, right? But it's unfortunate because although their intentions may be pure, they don't know what is best for you because they're not in your shoes, right? and you don't know what's best for them because you're not in their shoes. So no one knows what's best for each other, and yet we try and conversate and we try and articulate our point as if we did, right? And it's a big thing, but I won't get too big into that. How do you not lose your passion? If you're going day by day and you have to reject everything that is not your life task, the way that you do it, the way that I have found to be the best form, is to have it in front of you at all times. And this can be like a mantra that you say. This can actually be like a visual. It can be something that you listen to every morning. I remember listening to a lot of books and reading and hearing a lot of podcasts where people that were on their come up, very successful people that were on their come up, they had almost like a morning ritual where they would listen to one audio tape, right, every single morning, and it was the same success mantra, right, and they repeated it in their head because unfortunately, as soon as you leave your doors, as soon as you start like heading to work, everything is working against you, and if you don't have it in the forthright place in your mind where you understand is like, hey, I actually have something that's bigger than what I'm currently doing. I actually need to be focusing on this. This is the main priority, but what I have to do to survive is the second priority, right? And a lot of people make their job and, they make their job their first priority, even though they'll never tell it to your face, but their actions reflect it, right? But if you have even like a vision board, right? As corny as it may sound, it's one of the most impactful things that you can have, right, is a vision board, is having a visual representation of where you want to see your life and where you want to be, and basically never losing sight of that. That's what I have found to be the best form of not losing your life task, not losing yourself in this random, like big game of life, right? Because not losing yourself it's a 1% task, which basically means that 99% of people have lost themselves in this journey. And some people never found themselves to begin with. So it really is only 1 or 2% of the population that genuinely know their life task and they're committed to sticking to it, and they're not going to lose it. It's very few people. And it's for a good reason. It's very, very difficult. Like everything is working against you, and your mind will also work against you, right? So this is where you have to be even more careful, because as soon as you go into a job, as soon as you go into a profession where you can begin excelling, your brain will start seeing whatever is easiest, which is the path right in front of you, and it'll want to do that, right? So if you're decent at a job that you're at, but you hate it, right? But you're not that bad at it, and then your boss sees you doing well and they want to promote you, your mind is just going to think, oh, this is more money, which means more comfort, which means less things to have to worry about. But at the back of your mind, we will also have anxiety, and you also have an uneasiness of like, I don't know if I want to be depressed for the rest of your life, from the rest of my life. And this is kind of like where people start breaking out, right? Because you either have the people that completely lose sight of their life task and they get sucked into, the next promotion, the next pay raise, and they kind of lose themselves in the process, or you have people that find themselves in that position and they're just like, I can't keep doing this for the rest of my life, right? Yeah. And that's where they reignite their life task. But basically, having it right in front of you at all times. Because again, the world is working against you, your mind is working against you, your family's working against you, everyone's working against you. And they're not doing it necessarily intentionally, but they're doing it because they're trying to see you play out your role in life in standards that only they can measure on.
Play out your role in their life.
Play out your role in life through their lens, through their perspective of what it should be like. But yeah,
that's definitely a really good way to say it. I have a few things to comment on. So yeah, I mean, like you said, the road that you should take, again, there's one that's right in front of you, and then there's one through the side, through like the brambles and the thorns and bushes that's like, only been trodden through by like 2 or 3 other people. So there's a faint little path there. That's the one that you're supposed to take, or even the one that had no one go through it, and it's just like you have to just go right off the path and just go down the side of a mountain. Maybe you can't really see that far, so maybe it's off a mountain, maybe it goes right into a nice plain filled with dandelions, right? You don't know that. And we're also not saying it's easy to do this. If you have that job where you're decent or good at it, and you're about to get that promotion, and everything's telling you, your parents, your family are telling you, keep going at it, and your heart or the back of your head saying like, do I really want to do this? It's nearly impossible to pick what the right choice is, right? Which is like going with what you want to go with. We're not saying that's easy by any means. It's just that what ultimately are you going to look back on when you're on your deathbed and see is like, I picked the right thing there? Because how many years do you have left to live? And then you die, So it's kind of a sobering thought to think like you only have, however many more decades left of life, and you've already burned through, whatever percentage of your life and your like conscious life relative to, how fast you perceive time to move by, which is something you told me about. It's like your midway point's probably like in your
21.
Yeah, when you're like 21 or something like that. So it's crazy. So you definitely want to be able to make the right choices as early as possible, and it's not always easy. So yeah, it's something to anchor a lot of weight against, when you think about these things. It's not something to be taken lightly, because like that, you'll be a year later and, maybe you're even more tied down to your responsibilities or to whatever you need to be doing, that the choice is even more impossible to make. And then that's how you really lose sight of your vision. It's not something you do intentionally. It's not like you intentionally do it. It's like the rest of life pressures you, and there are so many other things you have responsibility to do that it just you can't do anything else by a certain point. So the earlier the better. So that's definitely something to be clear about. So focus also, this is a good quote. I forget who said it, but focus is about doing the one thing and ignoring the 99 other things, right? I don't know if you remember off the top of your head who said that. But
yeah, that reminds me a lot of this other quote, which is like, commitment is the elimination of alternatives.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much the same thing as focus. Yeah,
so that's definitely like, and those 99 other things are each like 10 times more appealing than the one thing too. So this is how hard it is. Like, this is your innate self, your lizard brain that's been tuned over millions of years is telling you to do the thing that is easier, that may not be right. And that's why it's hard to do. And it's like, congratulations if you're able to do it. And it's definitely not something that's like, oh yeah, you need to do this right now, immediately. It's so easy. How are you not doing it? How are you not making the right choice? Because everything else is telling you, don't do it. And your literal, like, your brain is fine-tuned to tell you not to do it in most cases, This is definitely something that's really relevant in like startup culture as well, of like, when you're first figuring things out, when you're early on in the journey, there's so much noise, because you're like pre-revenue, you don't have probably anyone paying you for your product. You're still trying to figure out what you're doing, and that's where it's most dangerous, because anyone's random opinion, whether they're spouting bullshit or whether they're like speaking gold, you don't really know. Right? Because, even the really smart people you'll meet who are like really technical or really great like investors or whatever, they don't know the domain like you do, or maybe they know it better. Or maybe they don't have that much experience, or maybe they do. Maybe they have decades of experience. And maybe even with all the experience and all the technical knowledge, they're still wrong about that thing that you're like confident about. Or maybe they're right about it. Like, you don't know. To some extent, you don't really know who's right and who's wrong, because all these metrics that say like someone's opinion is valuable or not go out the window when they're commenting on what you're doing. So it's really hard, because you have to sort of take all the opinions and aggregate them, and then you have to decide even whether that's like, those are valuable metrics if you feel really confident about what you need to do. And startups are different from real life, because you'll oftentimes not feel confident about what you're doing. Maybe in a startup it's easier, because you'll feel like, this is absolutely what I must do, right? This is like the thing I'm doing, like, I'm automating formal verification for computer chips, which is like, you otherwise would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on engineers to do that role, and you have to have all these advanced licenses and everything. It seems like insane to even want to do that, but I feel like this is right. I feel like this is what must be done. And there were so many pivots behind this of like people telling me something and then me thinking, shit, we did the wrong thing. This is what we need to be doing. And was that person right? Because maybe they were. I'm not even saying they were wrong. I'm not saying, maybe if I had listened to one of them and not pivoted again, I might be like, in a Lamborghini, like riding down, whatever, 280 with the windows down, right? Like they might have been right, but you don't know. And it's like, that's why it's so hard. That's the point I'm emphasizing. I'm not even saying like do what you're convicted with doing, or do what seems like completely the opposite of what you should be doing. It's like, it's hard to know. That's like the point I'm making here, is like, it's impossible with all these other, outside factors and stuff. There's only like a little sliver that you have to find of like, this is what actually feels like right to me. So yeah, it's really hard. Yeah. I mean, and another good quote is, with realizing what other people are saying to you may not be like right or whatever, even though their intentions are really pure, is like, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? The people throughout history who have had the best intentions, who wanted to do the greatest things, oftentimes were also what we see as like the most evil, right? Or who did the worst things. Because, thinking that everything and thinking that you are like giving this other person such great advice and that they absolutely have to be doing this is like, that's a real like trap that other people fall into, and you can't really fault them for it, because that's, they're giving you what they think is a really great piece of advice or whatnot, but it's not really always how it seems. It's not, might not be the best. So I don't know what thoughts you have. I sort of talked for a while there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to, kind of like close up a little bit, close down the conversation, because like everything that you said was very true. And I think that a big component of, this podcast in general is, how do you win at life? And like, this is why this was one of the most important topics that we brought up, and that's why we wanted to bring it up very early on. Because I feel like once you deviate away from what you were born to do, you begin losing at life, right? Because now you're no longer winning at your life, but you're winning on the standards of other people. So that means that you're losing at your life to win at other people's lives. And that's a bad place to have found yourself. Because now the societal metrics for your existence are predicated on, again, societal metrics. They're no longer your metrics. So it's a losing game. It's a lose-lose for everyone. And I think that the people that really win at life are the people that forge their own paths, and they genuinely just reject the societal conditioning of, I should be doing this. If I don't do this, then I'm going to be exiled from the group. And it's hard, right? It's very, very difficult, because I'm sure you felt this way, and I'm definitely felt this way. But like, doing something that goes against the grain makes you feel like you're going against the grain. And everyone thinks he's going against the grain.
What an idiot.
I know. It's and it's challenging, because sometimes those opinions will come from your closest friends, they'll come from your family, they'll come from people that have good intentions and they're well-meaning, right? But that quote that you said was very true. It's like, people will try and preach things onto you that they think are right for you, but ultimately they're not in your position and they don't have your lived experience. So their things don't apply. And you were talking about this earlier, and I think this is going to be a really nice way of like, touching base and kind of closing out here.
Yeah.
You said something about, if you were older, right, you'd kind of want to reflect back through the perspective of an older person, just to minimize regret, right? I think old people have something very well figured out, and I heard this on a podcast, and it was great. But basically, this guy was talking about how his grandpa, right? His grandpa was 70. Average life expectancy for him was about 80, right? So whenever he dealt with things that he didn't want to do, his thing that he would constantly say is, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this, right? You got into an argument, I don't have time for this. And it was true. He literally didn't have time for it. He only had 10 years left, right? And I think if we adopt that philosophy early on, even like, as young as we are, like if we think to ourselves, I only have 5 years left to live, legitimately, you would not do 99% of the things that, you do right now, because you just think, I don't have time for this. And the reality is, kind of what you were saying earlier, is that you genuinely might not have time for this. You genuinely could die today, right? Or tomorrow. And you would have wasted and squandered a lot of time. So I think, again, winning at life means knowing what you want out of life and knowing how to get it, right? And I think a big part of that is just finding your life task and sticking to it and being the best version of you with every single advantage that you were given, right? You always want to play to your strengths. You always want to use the advantages that you were given in accordance with your life task and your goals, with some urgency, right? Because as long as you have urgency, you can execute quickly. And the people that win in life are the ones that move the quickest.
And know what they don't have time for.
So it's very important, especially the urgency part, I think me and you have both been in that perspective where we've kind of let life, pass by a little bit. And that was a mistake for both of us. And we both kind of regret it. But, what you said earlier was very true. If you can just solidify what exactly you were made to do, what you were born to do at an early age, you have all the advantage going for you, right? Like this is something that is not taught in the education system. This is why we want to teach it, right? It's like when you're young, you need, it is like urgent for you to figure out what you want out of life and what is innate to you. The sooner that you figure this out, the sooner that you can start really living your own life and no longer living the life that your parents want you to live. Because up until this point, you've been living the life that your parents want you to live. And the only reason how you kind of know that is because you still live under their house, right? If you really lived against the grain, they probably would have kicked you out. But yeah, well, any thoughts on that?
No, it's
any way that you want
very well summed. Nothing I even want to clarify. That's so great. Great closer, great summation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But basically, we made this because it took us a long time to find out what our life task was. And it was ultimately the most important thing that any of us, me and you, and anyone can do with their time. There's no more important use of time than figuring out what you were born to do. The sooner that you do that, the sooner that you can save yourself from an insane amount of heartache, insane amount of trouble, insane amount of, having to go through this job and the next job and the next job because you're just not passionate. Nothing has lit you up. So as long as you spend some time, figure it out, take some urgency, keep it close to you, and learn how to apply it to be the best in whatever career or profession that you want to do, you're ultimately winning at life. And if you do that, you'll live a good, content life. And that's kind of the goal of this podcast. That's kind of the goal for all of you guys and for us as well. So if you do that, you'll win. And with that being said, I think this is a great way to wrap it up. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching.
Yeah.
And we'll catch you in the next one.
Adios.